Welcome to the TroupCast here on oneBURGH. Glad you could join us here on our oneBURGH Facebook channel, oneBURGH YouTube, or maybe you're listening back on Spotify. It is Wednesday, January 29th. I am your host, Ed Troup, and joining me back on the podcast is our good friend, Andrew Stockey from WTAE-TV. Andrew, how you doing?
Ed, it's good to see you. A pleasure to be with you, I guess, for a second time, I assume.
Yeah, you're now a two-timer, so you're back for your second visit with us here on oneBURGH and on the podcast. I think last spring was the last time we had you on, and we talked last spring about a lot of milestones that you're approaching in your career, and you and I were talking a little bit before we came on the air that in just another month or so, you will mark 30 years at WTAE. That is crazy.
I have to be honest with you, I never expected to be here 30 years. That was never the game plan. Many of your viewers and listeners may know I'm not originally from Pittsburgh, moved here for the job. And, I thought it would be like a stepping stone to Chicago or Boston or a big city, and it just became home. So in March, I will finish up 30 years here at Channel 4. And it's been more than I could have possibly imagined. It's been a lot of fun. There've been highs and lows. There's been great people I've met over the years. And as you said before, now when you hit 30 years, suddenly you become a legend, I guess. Is that what happens?
Yes, sir. I think you're on that Mount Rushmore or Mount Washington Rushmore, I should say, of Pittsburgh broadcast legends. You're up here with Paul Long now and Sally Wiggin. You're good friend.
Oh, no. I am nowhere close to Sally Wiggin or Paul Long. I'm just happy that during this stretch of time, I've been able to be part of an incredible story and an incredible history of Channel 4. But Sally and Joe and those, they're on a different level.
Well, Andrew, we do have to talk about this. I'm going to post this picture of you in this hat from the Steelers-Bengals. I believe it was a preview. And our friends here at oneBURGH, our comedic writers, if you will, they had a little bit of fun with you here, calling you Detective Stockey with this hat on. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about this hat and what came about with it?
Okay, so this was the final game of the regular season against the Bengals. I was doing a live post-game coverage on the field, and as you well know, it was very cold that night. So honestly, I wore a heavier jacket than I normally do. That's why it has that big collar. And as for the hat, I'm not somebody who likes to wear wool caps. I just don't. And I knew I had to wear some kind of hat on my head. And I've had that fedora in my closet for 15 years. And, I was like, it's warm for me. I mean, I just want to cover my head. So I put it on. I don't always think about style, but it's kind of like, let's just give it a try and see what happens, And I wasn't worried about, I didn't think there would be a whole lot of reaction. It just was more functional than anything else. And then I got a lot of nice compliments at the station. And then, I shared it with on my Facebook page, that picture, and people really tuned in. They said, "Hey, we love the hat." My only fear is that people are paying attention to what I'm wearing and not what I'm saying. And I don't want that to be the case at all. I'm somebody who likes to have a little bit of flair, a little bit of style, but not go overboard. But, to be honest with you, it was just a functional thing. And I just thought, hey, I haven't worn it in 15 years. Let me throw it on. It's appropriate for that night.
It was a great look, and it kept you warm. That's probably the most important part of that, right? You were on the field for the pregame.
I'll tell you, if I ever really want to be a detective, I'll wear the yellow trench coat and the yellow fedora so I can be Dick Tracy.
Exactly. That's more of your vibe, I'm sure, when you go down that. Well, hey, the Detective Stockey, Andrew Stockey, we'll call you everything you want there. Let's start with this. The Steelers, the Pens, and the Pirates, none have had any playoff wins recently. In Pitt's football program, they struggled towards the end of the season. The basketball team at Pitt, of course, had a big win against North Carolina last night, but they've been up and down. Is this the worst the Pittsburgh sports scene has been during the 30 years that you've been here in town as far as playoff droughts and performance goes?
I would say so. I mean, I think a lot of people might remember the 80s were also a struggle. But for me, this has been the worst time. I mean, the Steelers are just good enough to get in the playoffs, but not good enough to do anything once they get to the playoffs. The Penguins, we've been going on this now for 3 years of kind of treading water and not getting any better. After the first 16 years I was here, they were making the playoffs. I was so used to, not for 16 years, but a 16-year stretch, they were making the playoffs. And as for the Pirates, I mean, I thought after 2015 they'd found that formula for success, and it's just not happened. So it's a tough time to be a Pittsburgh sports fan. And I'm on social media, and I hear what the viewers are saying. I hear what the fans are saying, and I get it, But I think people also need to realize these things are cyclical. Sports is a cyclical thing. One team is up, another team is down. One team is winning, another team is losing. You have to find victory where you can. For instance, and we have a volleyball team. I know it's volleyball, but Pitt volleyball has become a dominant force. Okay. If you really go and watch the matches, it's fun. It's exciting. They're a Final Four team every year. We do have teams that are successful, but I know the big three is what we all want to have happen. We want them to win. And I think it'll eventually happen. I think, of the three, I still believe the Steelers will be first because I think they're at that point where they're on that level where they can be a really good football team. The Penguins, I think it's going to take a lot longer. The Pirates, I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, despite the fact you have Paul Skeens and a lot of talented young pitching, will they make the investment in hitters, which is what I think they need to do to be a contender?
Well, let's dive into some of those teams you just mentioned, Andrew, as far as who could possibly be next to break that spell of, playoff losing streaks. We'll start with the Steelers. Art Rooney met with the media this past week. It doesn't seem like there's any changes coming to the black and gold. Rooney kind of, led to believe that we're going to stay the course. Are the Steelers on a similar path from an ownership standpoint, Andrew? And this came up this past week out there of like the New York Giants, for example, and in the Marek ownership that they have there that, they had Eli Manning for a few years and they just kind of stay the course and they don't adapt to what the current culture is. Are the Rooneys and the Steelers on a similar path that, hey, this is the best we can do. This is what it's going to be going forward, and they're not going to adapt to what the NFL currently is?
That's a good question. That's probably my biggest question. We do have a chance to sit down with Art later this week to ask some questions that we want to ask beyond what you've already heard. That's, in my opinion, probably the biggest problem. We know about the Steeler way. The standard is the standard. We know all the cliches. But does that work in the modern day NFL? Right. Clearly, it's not. You need to change the way you do business, I believe, to be successful. Everybody wants to fire Mike Tomlin. That's great. I understand the passion. But you know what? You fire him and then what? What's the plan? Who's going to take over? You give me the plan, and I might get into this, but there's no plan beyond what they've been doing. And that plan and what they do has to change. Whether it's free agency, it needs to change. The way they look at drafting needs to change. The kind of team they want to build, the kind of offense they want to run. There's a lot of things they need to take a look at. But I really do believe, as you mentioned, I think a change in the way the Steelers do business might be the biggest change leading to them being successful. I mean, right now, it's just they've been doing the same thing for 70 years, 80 years, whatever, and it hasn't changed. And I think that's the biggest problem with the Steelers, that they just continue to do things the way the Steelers do things.
One of the things, Andrew, too, when you take a look at the Steelers and the way they've operated over these years, they've built this team from the draft. And they've been successful enough to have good draft picks. But really, when you take a look at the last 5 to 10 drafts that they have had, including the last 2, there's still question marks in and around Broderick Jones at the tackle position. Troy Fautanu, of course, was hurt, so we don't know about him yet. But they've had a lot more misses than hits in the drafts in the last 5 or 10 years. And you just wonder if that's starting to obviously catch up with this football team.
Well, I think without question. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out the Kenny Pickett selection in the first round. I mean, that was – I know Kenny, covered him at Pitt, great young quarterback. Was he the 17th best player in that draft? No. I mean, they could have gotten him in the second round. Draft-wise, they were very good. But you have to remember, when the Steelers started to have success drafting, and we're going to go back in time to the 70s, it's because they were finding diamonds in the rough. Remember Bill Nunn. Bill Nunn was scouring the black colleges when people weren't. They didn't have the competition they do now. I mean, everybody knows everything about everybody now. And also the Steelers are drafting, 17 to 22. You're not going to find real big impact players at 17 to 22. So maybe it's a case of trading up. Maybe it's a case of being more active in free agency. I know it's not something that the Steelers normally do, but I think in the modern day NFL, to find the players you want and the players who are going to be successful, you've got to hit free agency hard.
Well, they're going to have a lot of cap room this upcoming season, that's for sure. I think over $50 million in order to spend. They could free up another, 10 to 15 to almost $20 million if they cut some key veterans that they expect to probably do during this offseason. Omar Khan, everything was pointing up after last spring, right? Between the draft, the free agency, and the start of the season. When you're 10-3 and looking like you're going to wrap up the division. And there was even talk Tomlin was going to be coach of the year. Yeah. That Russell Wilson had been reinvented at the quarterback position, and the Steelers were even in the conversation with the Bills and Chiefs to be the top seed. And then, of course, the floor fell out. They go on that big losing streak to finish up the season. But Andrew, I'm one to believe in any sport, including football, winning solves everything. And for the Steelers, winning did not solve anything. They fell apart towards the end of the season. And here we are in yet another offseason with a lot of question marks.
It's very weird. The Steelers are in a place that is unusual. They're good enough to be good, but not good enough to be great. And their situation is not so dire, they can improve it through the draft. So they're in this place like, how do we get out of this? I remember the 1999-2000 Tampa Bay Buccaneers were in that same position. Tony Dungy's teams. They would get to the conference championship game and lose. They were just a team that was good enough, but just couldn't get over the hump. Then they basically got rid of Dungy, traded for John Gruden, and they finally won a Super Bowl. I'm not saying that's what they should do, but that's kind of where the Steelers are right now. We have a team here that's good enough to be a playoff caliber team, but not good enough to be among the elite in the NFL. They're not the Bills, they're not the Chiefs, they're not the Ravens. The question now is, what do they do moving forward with Mike Tomlin, with Art Rooney, and with Omar Khan? Everybody has a suggestion. I'm curious to see what they do this offseason. I kind of thought last offseason, especially getting both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields for $4 million for one season to be able to pick a quarterback would have been the answer. And here we are today. They still don't know who they're going to keep. Doesn't that blow you away? Here we are a year later almost, and we still don't know which guy is going to stay.
And Art Rooney said in his presser the other day that it sounds like, they're not going to sign both. They're only going to sign one of the two possibly. Russell Wilson has already come out publicly and said that he's in negotiations already and he wants to stay a Pittsburgh Steeler. But of course, now there's some speculation that Pete Carroll was named the new head coach with the Las Vegas Raiders, that he may reunite with him. But all indications should be that Justin Fields is that quarterback of the two that they should sign, right? He's the more athletic quarterback, the younger quarterback. And he showed us some signs for those first 6 games of the season that he could be the starter, at least to fill in that gap until they can draft a potential franchise quarterback.
I agree. You're not going to get anybody in free agency right now who's going to be where Justin is. Justin is young, and Justin needs to play a little bit more to, really get especially the passing part of his game together. But he is the long-term solution. There's no question about it. But as a Steeler team, if you think you're that close, if we get like 2 or 3 guys in free agency who are going to put us over the top offensively, maybe you keep Russell Wilson. I think that's the thing. How close do you think you are will determine the guy that you sign. My feeling is Justin Fields just seems to check all the boxes for this franchise, having a long-term solution, because what it was like before Ben Roethlisberger. Every year was somebody different. We went through Jim Miller, Mike Tomczak, Cordell Stewart, Tommy Maddox. It's nice to have stability at the quarterback position, and I think that's critical. And that's why Justin Fields may not be Lamar Jackson, he may not be Patrick Mahomes, but he's a stable, young person quarterback with a lot of upside and a lot of potential.
Yeah, I think at this point, they just need to find somebody to get them over that playoff drought hump and get them back into that conversation beyond the wild card round, potentially to a Final Four in the NFL. And the quarterback position will be a big, important part of that. We're talking with Andrew Stockey, WTAE-TV anchor and sports director here on the TroupCast here on oneBURGH. Andrew, let's pivot to hockey. I know you're passionate about hockey. We were just talking a little bit before we came on the air that, and if you follow Andrew on social media, which we encourage you to do out there as well, Andrew plays amateur hockey still at this point in your life. You're passionate about the game and you still play. And here's the kicker. You play at 6:00 in the morning on Wednesdays, right?
Monday and Wednesdays, I play at 6 a.m. I started 4 years ago. I had never played hockey before. I've skated on my entire life growing up in New England, but never played hockey. Always wanted the opportunity, though. And, it was expensive when I was a kid. And there were people that looked like me that played hockey. So I just didn't see it as a real thing I could do. Well, here I am now in my 50s, and a friend talked me into coming out one day and watching a bunch of not old people, because we have people in their 20s who play in the 30s. In fact, my league is co-ed, and there's no checking. And I just started playing, and I love it. I did it this morning. It's my go-to. It's exciting. It's energizing. It's a great workout. I wish I could play more. I really do. I absolutely love the game.
Well, you're a sports guy, and we're all about stats in the sports world. Give us your stats, man. Any goals scored so far this year?
Well, I'm the captain of my team, and so I have been for the last couple of years. And my team is called the Whalers, which is still my favorite hockey team that no longer exists, my hometown Whalers. I don't know how many I've scored this year. I did have a 6-goal game 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
I just had everything going right. I'm probably somebody who does more assists, have more assists than I do goals. But I'm somebody who loves playing defense. I mean, I'll take the puck. If it, I'll block the net. I'll take a shot off the body. I'll do what's necessary defensively to help my hockey team. And I play center too, so I'm up and down.
And you said it's quite the workout, right?
You take off your equipment when you're done. First of all, it smells like I can't believe how bad it smells. But also the sweat. I mean, you're on the ice and you are sweating bullets. In fact, I'm sitting down when I take a break in between shifts. I can feel the sweat coming down to my eyes and I can't see anything. But I absolutely love it. And it's nice at this age where you can discover something new that you really not only enjoy, but you're halfway decent at.
That's great. Keep up the good work there. Let's talk about the Penguins, Andrew.
We have to.
Since we're talking about hockey, yeah, do we have to, right? This is, what's more exciting to talk about right now, the Pirates or the Penguins? We'll do the Pirates next, but let's talk about the Penguins briefly.
Right.
24-8, almost at the mid-season point here in another week or two. Do you think this team could possibly make a playoff push here towards the end of the season? They've missed the playoffs the last 2 seasons.
As it's constructed right now, no. I mean, I've watched enough of this team during the season. It's been disappointing. Last night 2 nights ago in San Jose, Crosby scored and that was it. I got a sense the team just isn't into it anymore. You're about to hit this tournament, the Four Nations face-off. There's a lot of thought that there'll be a trade period before that face-off and then the official trade period on March 7th. The Penguins, I think, have to make moves, number one, just to get better. This hockey team has gone south. They're losing to teams they have no business losing to. Obviously, goaltending, it's gotten so bad. Tristan Jarry is in the minors right now. Other than Sidney Crosby, Rickard Rakell, Brian Rust, nobody's doing any scoring. Malkin's on IR. The team has gotten older. Carlson and Letang. This is a team that should have made some moves last offseason. This team really needed, not to blow it up, but they need to make some moves last offseason. Now, the question is, do you blow it up? Crosby's the only untouchable. Do you blow it up and start again and forget about trying to make the playoffs this year? Or do you add some pieces, get rid of a few guys, and try to make a run with maybe a younger hockey team? At this point, I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs. I just don't see it. But here's the funny thing. We carry Penguin Hockey on Channel 4. We do 4 games on Saturday as part of the ABC package. So we're going to be talking about this. And I got a feeling they're going to make a little bit of a run and do what they did last year, which is get us all excited, even though they're clearly just not good enough to get there, and then probably not make the playoffs. But this offseason, and actually right now, major changes need to happen. And obviously Mike Sullivan is going to be part of that conversation. What happens with him? I think one of the reasons he's not been let go or they haven't made a move, is because he's the head coach of Team USA in the Four Nations face-off. You can't get rid of the coach of Team USA. And I like Mike, but right now something's got to happen, or this team's just going to continue like this.
Yeah, last year it came down to the last game or two of the season. Yeah. They almost squeaked into the playoffs, but they missed it there at the end. There's some rumors out there, and of course, just rumors that Sidney Crosby could possibly be traded. There's no way that happens, right? There's no way the Penguins trade Sidney Crosby.
No, I mean, unless he wants to be traded. I don't know about his contract and whether it allows him to, be traded if he wants out. He's the untouchable. He's the guy that will not go anywhere, at least as far as the Penguins are concerned. Everybody else, I think, has to be on the table. You have to listen to deals, offers for everybody. But the question is, what do you really have to offer? I mean, you got Rakell, you've got, Rust. After that, who do you have that anybody would really want?
Not many.
That's the problem. You've got nothing to trade with. But I do not see Sidney Crosby being traded. And that would be, it makes no sense. This team would be set back so far that as bad as they are now, it would be even worse, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't either as well, Andrew. You mentioned the Hartford Whalers a little bit ago. I have to talk about that briefly. I grew up and went to Bell Vernon, grew up in Ross River Township near the Ross River Ice Gardens. And they used to have an old school NHL logos up at the top. And the Hartford Whalers was always one of my favorites that I used to look at. So good shout out. I know you grew up in the New England states, and Hartford Whalers is always one of my favorite old school NHL logos. That's for sure. And you wear it sometimes. I've seen you post on Facebook, right?
I have a lot of Whaler ball caps. I wear Whaler jersey when I play hockey. I have 3 different Whaler jerseys. Ronnie Francis, I first got to know him when he was in Hartford. And so when I got here and he was here, it was pretty cool. And I'll never forget, I met Eddie Johnston when I first came here. He was the GM of the Whalers when they made that trade with the Penguins in '92. They brought Francis to Pittsburgh and ultimately won them that second Stanley Cup. So I met Eddie Johnston, and the first thing I said was, Mr. Johnston, I'm Andrew Stockey. I work for Channel 4. New to town, but I want to let you know I still do not like you based on what you did to my hockey team. So, and we laugh about it even to this day. We do.
That's great. The Penguins back in action tonight. They'll play in Utah. First time ever. That's weird to say hockey in Utah, right?
I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. I hope they keep the name Utah Hockey Club. I think it's a cool name. I think it's really exciting to see what they're doing up there. Logan Cooley, the kid from West Mifflin, is on that team. They're a tough team to play against. And, this is one of those games where the Penguins, they need a win. They desperately need a win. I just don't know if it's going to come tonight. I really don't. There's nothing that says to me that somewhere on the horizon, a 5-game winning streak is coming.
We're talking with Andrew Stockey from WTAE-TV, one of the news anchors there that you can catch each and every night. Also, sports director as well. Still doing double duties there, Andrew. Sports was your first love, but man, you're one of the main news anchors now there at WTAE as well.
Well, I'm very blessed because I love doing both. I love politics. I love business news. I love sports. So be able to do all those. I mean, my day is basically, as I joke around, but the first half of my day is death and destruction. The second half is fun. In many ways, I just love, being a part of this community and sharing with people news and information, what's going on in their world. And then later in the day, getting to take advantage and enjoy the fun of sports. That's one of the reasons I don't take it incredibly seriously. I mean, a lot of people in this business who are sports journalists sometimes do take it seriously. And I understand that. But after you see what happens in the world, the real world, sports is fun. And we should look at it that way, win or lose.
Andrew will be celebrating 30 years at WTAE this upcoming March.
Yeah.
That's the second time I've mentioned it here on the podcast, Andrew. I'm so sorry, but you don't look like it, my friend. Like we talked about earlier, other than the hair, you still look the same as you did 30 years ago.
Well, I tell you, I can't believe it's been that long. And, I don't like to toot my own horn, but I like to share with people, hey, I've been a part of this community for 30 years. I mean, I'm a Pittsburgher. I hope by now. I love this city. I love its people. I know I'm a Pittsburgher because when I go away, like I was in Boston last weekend, after 2 days, I want to come home because this is the best place, in my opinion, on earth. And it's been a joy to be able to work at Channel 4 and, to be that person now who is, front and center and helping to lead our coverage news every night. It's pretty cool. I never could have imagined this. It's a dream come true if I had that dream.
Well, let me put you on the spot, Andrew.
Sure.
During that 30 years, why don't you give me two tidbits here? One is, what was your favorite sports story during those 30 years that you covered? And then now that you do news too, what has been one of the biggest news stories that you've covered since you've taken over the anchor chair?
Good or bad?
Good or bad? I'm sure it's probably going to be bad on the news side, right?
Well, the story that will always stay with me was the Stanton Heights shootings, the 3 officers who were killed in responding to a domestic call. I was head out of town, got a call about it. I came over to Stanton Heights, had never been there before. And I basically was there and watched this whole thing unfold. It was heartbreaking, and you're live on the air trying to convey what's going on. I mean, it's the first time I'd done anything quite like that as a news anchor. And then, over the years, I've gotten to know the families who lost loved ones. I've gotten to continue to take part in the remembrance. It was one of those very difficult days and one I will never forget. But I also remember how great the Pittsburgh community was coming together to support the families of the officers who were killed. So that's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest. Sports-wise, it's still the 2013 wildcard game. That night, I remember I would do talk shows and people would say to me, hey, Pittsburgh's not really a baseball town. And I would always say it's a dormant baseball town. If you give the people here a team to root for and a reason to get excited, they will. And that night, everybody wore black, as you remember. Yep. It was 20 years of frustration coming out one night. Nobody sat down. They must have yelled the whole night, and they impacted the game. I mean, I still believe the Cueto drop ball, that was the fans. And that night, I don't care if the Pirates ever win the World Series. If they do, that's great. Nothing will equal that night, even if they win the World Series, because that night was a chance for Pittsburgh to say, hey, we this is what happens when we have a good baseball team, and we will come out, we will support you. So yeah, that's for me the greatest sports moment that I've ever covered here. And I don't think, and that includes Super Bowls. Nothing will ever touch that night.
Andrew, we've been doing the podcast. This is our second season here starting in 2025, did the entire year last year in 2024. You were actually one of our original guests last spring. And every person I've brought on, whether they're a football, basketball, baseball, hockey guy, when I talk about the Pittsburgh sports scene, that is the event everybody has brought up in the last year as the highlight in the last 20, 25 years. It is that wild card game 2013. It's amazing to me. Every time we talk about it, this city is so hungry for a winner when it comes to baseball. And that's a good segue to my last part on the podcast with you. And that's to talk about the Pirates. Spring training is only 2 weeks away, 15 days actually. Pitchers and catchers report to Bradenton on February 12th. Will Paul Skeens lead the Pirates to the playoffs in 2025?
Not by himself. Not by himself. The one thing Paul Skeens does, other than generate the kind of excitement I don't think I've ever seen for a baseball player in this town, he gives this team a chance every time he goes out. Right. You know full well after 6 innings you're going to be down by 1 or 2 runs if you haven't scored anything because of him. Okay, you've got the dominant pitcher. You've also got some other guys. I mean, you hope Jared Jones will, pick up where he left off. Mitch Keller. You have the makings of a really good rotation. You've got the pitching. They need help, though. They need help. I mean, they got to get some people who can hit. I mean, Adam Frazier is not the answer, okay? I know that's the big offseason pickup right now.
Right.
But,
yep.
Yeah, they need offense desperately. I mean, I'm talking about one big bat. Go out and spend – the $20 million and get somebody, please. Right now, as they're constructed, no, they're not going to make the playoffs. And Paul Skeens can't do it by himself. Paul Skeens is going to have a 20-win season at least. But I guarantee you, it could be 25. Except this team, as it's constructed right now, will not give him enough offense to pull that off. They need hitting. They don't have it right now.
And you got to think that, you're going to have this window with Paul Skeens for a handful more years. I mean, everybody knows that, he's going to leave once this contract is up in a few years. He's going to go sign elsewhere for big money, unless he gets hurt or something crazy happens in his career. He'll be on that path, unfortunately, for Pirate fans. So, they have a short window, much like they had with Garrett Cole and A.J. Burnett and that playoff run in the mid, 2013, 2014, and 2015. Now is the time. I can't agree with you more, Andrew. Go out, spend the money, get this roster in order and go out and compete while you still have this pitching that they have. And not just Skeens. I mean, they have a good staff when it comes to pitching, and now is the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything is set up for this team to take that next step if you invest in the team and you bring in you bring in a big name free agent. Like I say, it's all about hitting at this point. I think the bullpen will be fine. You've got veteran leadership. I mean, Andrew McCutcheon is back, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's a very good thing. You've got some guys that can't hit, like Joey Bart was a big surprise last year, but provide a lot of offense. Yeah. But you have Brian Reynolds, who I still think is one of the better power hitters in the National League. But, I mean, you've got to add something to it. You have to. And if you don't do it this year, and time is running out. What are you telling your fan base? What are you telling your fan base? I like Paul Skeens, but as I said, what happens is the Steelers the Pirates suddenly become like the Pittsburgh Theater. It's something you go to once in a while because there's a big star performing, and then you don't go the rest of the time.
Andrew, would the 11-year-old Andrew Stockey get a Paul Skeens card from Topps? That memorable card that was pulled in California. Would the 11-year-old version of you take the deal that was on the table that the Pirates were willing to trade and give up season tickets behind home plate for 30 years, an exhibition game at PNC Park, and all the other goodies that came with that? The 11-year-old in California said no thanks. He's going to put it up for auction and potentially make multiple millions of dollars off of that card. What would you do?
The 11-year-old. Of course,
11-year-old Andrew.
11-year-old Andrew, it would be the 1970s. So I would actually take the deal because at that point I'm a baseball fan. I grew up a baseball fan. I mean, to sit behind home plate, have tickets, to be able to play a softball game with your friends, to meet your idol. When you're 11, that's, at least back then, that's how you thought. I didn't sit there and think about, how much money can I make? It was about, I grew up watching the Red Sox, and I'll never forget going to Fenway Park during 78. that season where they lost in the playoff to the Yankees. And to be able to see your heroes, Jim Rice, Fred Lynn, Carlton Fisk. If I'd be able to do that every single day, I would have been so happy. So 11-year-old me probably would have taken the deal.
Fenway Park is baseball heaven. My family, my wife, and I have two boys that are 14 and 11. I just turned 11, my youngest. And we've had the opportunity over the last 4 or 5 summers to go to a couple different Major League Baseball stadiums. And a couple years ago, we went to Fenway Park. And I can tell you, I've been to Wrigley, Fenway, a handful of others, Milwaukee. Fenway is baseball heaven. If you are a baseball fan, there is nothing like catching a game at Fenway Park. It's just baseball purity at its best.
Well, the only thing that's better is catching a hockey game at Fenway Park.
Oh, there you go.
That was there 2 years ago for the Winter Classic, and that was pretty cool. I mean, to be able to be in Fenway Park, and have a hockey rink there, and interviewing Sidney Crosby after the game, one-on-one in the visiting clubhouse at a ballpark, that was kind of cool.
That is awesome, man. I forgot about that Winter Classic up there at Fenway Park. Hey, Andrew, we're out of time, but, man, I could keep going on and on and on with you. Would love to have you back on the podcast again later this spring. I know baseball is one of your passions, and I also know this. Paul Skeens is on the cover of the 2025 MLB Show Game, and do you still do that? I used to play the entire season, right, back in the day?
Look, I just played Madden. I finished up the Madden season, and by the way, the Steelers, they win the Super Bowl in my Madden game. Okay.
In mine too.
Yeah.
Why can't they do that in real life?
I have no idea. I mean, they even beat the Lions, but no, I'm going to pre-order my MLB The Show. I play out the whole season. I do it as 2 different teams, the Pirates and the Red Sox. So when I go off the air at 11:30, I come home and I play baseball. And maybe that's one of the reasons I may look so young or act so young, because you're playing video games. It keeps your mind going. It keeps you flexible. And, it takes you back to a time when we used to play Stratomatic. You remember that, or wiffle ball? So
absolutely.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely getting the video game without question.
And you got to be excited to see Skeens on the cover of that this upcoming year, right?
I thought he would get it by himself. I was kind of surprised. I don't think Gunnar Henderson and Ellie De La Cruz are of that level. But hey, look, I'm just excited. And here's the thing: I download it, so I don't actually get the cover, like the hard cover.
Same here. Yep.
Which kind of stinks.
Yep, that's right. You got to go out and buy the hard copy if you actually want to have a memorable part of it. Hey, Andrew, thank you so much for coming on the podcast here on oneBURGH on the TroupCast. You can catch Andrew Stockey each and every night during the weeknights on WTAE-TV, anchoring the news, as well as doing sports in the evenings as well. Make sure you follow Andrew as well on social media. He is a fun follow. Lots of good stuff out there throughout the year. And Andrew, thanks again for coming on.
And thanks for having me. Always a pleasure. I look forward to talking to you down the road, hopefully when the Pirates are in the thick of a pennant chase this summer.
I like that idea. I like that as well. But you said it at the top of the podcast. You think the Steelers are the next one to break that out of the next 3, right?
I just think they're that close. I just think they're that talented. But, I also predicted, by the way, I got my prediction from the beginning of the football season. I had the Steelers 8-9 not making the playoffs. So what do I know?
Well, I had them 10-7, but I had them much different than the path that they went on. Let me tell you, they were not 10-3 at Midway, and they certainly didn't lose their last 5 as well. All right, that'll do it for the TroupCast for this week on oneBURGH. Thank you for joining us here on our oneBURGH Facebook channel, oneBURGH YouTube, or maybe you're listening back on Spotify. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next week right here on oneBURGH.